Hey, welcome to Unfiltered episode 3. I'm Brandon Lindsey. I'm here with Terry Moran as always. And today we're joined by a guest all the way from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Pinnacle Productions' very own Chris Hintz. Thanks for joining us today, Chris. So we're going to jump in.
Happy to be here, guys.
Chris is a big time AV guy, corporate AV. They do a lot of different things out there, and we thought we might pick his brain today on some things like that. I know, speaking for myself, I have one hotel where I do all their corporate AV. I know Terry has some accounts where he does some corporate AV, so we're a little on the smaller side compared to what Chris is doing. But Chris, what advice would you have for a DJ who's looking to get into corporate AV, on a small scale initially, and where would you start?
Well, I would say, first of all, if you are interested in getting in the AV side, definitely try to work for another AV company if you're able to. Most of us have great relationships with cross-renting gear, especially in the DJ space. Like, there's a lot of things that we could purchase, but of course, are we going to use it every weekend? Probably not. Can we store it? Probably not. We all have our minimums and stuff and what we can do and not do, but I would say if you're interested in the AV space, definitely talking with other AV providers, seeing if you can help with them, shadow an event, even sometimes unpaid. At least you're going to get your, look behind the curtain and see how things are done. Because I think DJs tend to think that the AV side of things is really simple, and it's really not simple. It's very, very stressful. It's very high quality work. And I think a lot of DJs, not a lot, but some, I would say, cut corners. And you can't cut corners on microphones. You can't cut corners on great projectors. You have to have great product, and your product is going to be representing Fortune 500 companies in a lot of cases, and sometimes those people don't have the same buying power as what your brides and grooms do. Your brides and grooms are going to work with you one time, and I think that barrier is real because no one wants to say they made a bad decision when they hired someone. And on the DJ side of things, wedding side of things is really big, but on the corporate side of things, it doesn't take much for one little thing to affect a company's overall flow of the event and create a really bad train wreck. Train wrecking 2 songs at a wedding isn't a big deal, but train wrecking the keynote speaker of a $25,000-$30,000 conference, that's something you can't recover from.
Yeah, I know where you're coming from there. When I got started at this hotel where I'm doing their corporate AV now, it came from I had a very good relationship with the lady who works at the hotel, who owns the hotel, and she was looking to make a move and do something a little different. I don't know her all of her reasonings, but when she was first bringing me in, she said, "Hey, we've got a room with some AV stuff," and I went over and looked at their microphones and things that they had, and I'm like, this isn't going to work. We're going to have to make an investment here if we're going to do this. So we did. We made the investment, and it's been crucial. I mean, I can't imagine doing some of those events with lackluster equipment and all the pressure that is on you in those moments where literally the CEO of a big company's up there expecting it to work. So absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a really key introduction point too. If you have that ability to have someone in the know in those hotels or in those properties like you did there, those people are pretty much your biggest cheerleaders, especially if they like you already working with brides and grooms. It's a very easy transition to walk you through because you know the space, you know the layout, you know the team, and you can definitely become an advocate there. And that's a really good transition if you're looking to dip your toe into that AV side of things. But I think also being able to talk to things that the banquet captains and the managers really care about, which is the key sales. Most people treat AV as a very, redheaded stepsister or the person who's in the corner. They don't really treat AV as something that's a moneymaker or a revenue producer. But what it does do is it keeps a very high level of consistency within the brand, and you can make their brand better because of what you're doing on the AV side of things. Because traditionally, ballroom AV is very unsexy, it's very unskilled, and it's a flip a coin whether it works or not. So if you can create really good relationships with that venue and you create better events for the venue's partner, obviously, and our mutual client, you can write yourself a pretty nice check every year, and you're giving them peace of mind, and they don't have to worry about it. So I think the problems that you'll have if you're working in some of those spaces, like I have an event this coming weekend at an event space I've never been to out in Rapid City, that they just ensured that all of their tech is brand new and it works great and everything, and I really genuinely hope it does. But I did prepare for the in case it is not what they promised it to be. So we have backups so that regardless of what happens, the client's going to be taken care of. And I think that peace of mind is something that is invaluable for especially corporate event planners.
So, Chris, let me ask you a question. Are most of the events you're doing these Fortune 500 type companies, or are you doing the smaller, like sales kickoffs and things like that? And if so, are the client sites, the banquet halls, the function rooms, are they usually providing their own AV that you're just kind of producing with their equipment, or do you prefer to bring in your own stack and run everything from your side?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think for the most part, um, our clients are not Fortune 500. So I would say maybe 10% a year could be in the Fortune 500 category. I mean, we work with Aflac, we work with Johnstone Supply, which is a massive HVAC supplier, and Vivacity, and a few other of these larger names in different spaces. But most of them, I would say, are your $2 to $10 million companies that are looking to either have a sales gala or some kind of a keynote, or the nonprofits that are looking for people to speak on whatever their expertise is, like SME, sales and marketing executives. So we work a lot with them and produce those events, but it's really a hybrid. I mean, some event centers have great projectors, have great sound. Well, I wouldn't say great sound, but definitely have great projectors and great screens. Sound is always negative, but the technology side of things is definitely kind of like a mechanic. They want to use their tools because they know the tools work. And
Right.
ultimately, whether you're producing the event, with somebody else's gear, you're the one you're on the line and you're on the contract. So it's really about peace of mind in that regard. So I would say 5% maybe are Fortune 500, 95% are not Fortune 500. But I still think that the messaging that we're trying to help them convey is equally as important, whether it's, the NFL, or whether it's, Avera Health here in Sioux Falls. So
Right. And now my next question is, you and I have worked together in the past where we've shared some quotes, and you've certainly mentored me along, so I appreciate that.
absolutely.
So, how do you approach when a client comes and just says, "Oh, we just need a pair of speakers"? They maybe haven't done Bing events in the past.
Yep.
They don't have an understanding of what a run of show entails, or they'll figure it out the day before type thing. What's your method to kind of get them into the groove that you're trying to produce and the way that you do things, and how do you guide and mentor them to get them up to speed? Did you hear
So
that, Chris?
that's a
Yeah.
great question. Yeah, I did. I heard the general gist of it. Basically, how do you get people to understand that they don't know what they don't know? And
Right.
ultimately, I try to use methods of assimilation, right? So if I'm working with a medical conference, and they're saying, well, I only need this and I only need this, I try to use terms and relate in ways that they understand that they're great at their profession. And I'm not going to tell them what scalpel to use. So please don't tell me
Right.
what scalpel to use when I'm helping you produce your event.
Right.
And I think when you can get to that point where you say, hey, listen, I'm not going to come in and do a sleep study and tell you how the sleep study is going to work. I'm going to listen to you because you are the expert. On this side of the ball, I'm the expert. And I know that there are things, sorry, I know there are things that I can help accomplish that you simply don't know. And that's totally okay. You are great at what you do. I am great at what I do. And ultimately, if you are hiring somebody else, you want them to be smarter than you, and you want them to tell you things that you need to hear that you might not know. That's totally okay.
Right.
But when you get to the
Right.
point where it's someone's like talking down and thinking they don't know, that's just not a fit. And that's totally okay. And
Yeah.
realistically, there's two limitations to what we can do and what we can work with. It's a budget and imagination. That's it. Those are your two limiting factors. And if you have
Yeah.
a lot of one, you can help with the other. If you have zero, we're probably not going to help you.
Right. One thing that I feel like has been the magic bullet when I deal with clients that may have not done a lot of corporate events is that one of the first things I do is I send them a run of show from a past show. And I say, hey, we're going to kind of use this as a template. I send it as a Word document so they can modify, and I make sure there's no proprietary stuff on there. But for the most part, I show, here's the line of speakers, we number them. If they have a corresponding file or JPEG or PowerPoint that they need run, we correspond speaker number one with PowerPoint number one. So it's easier on the back end for the production team. And when I start speaking like that, and it's certainly in a endearing way, to help them understand. I never try and be condescending.
Mm-hmm.
I almost feel like sometimes we're dealing with the head of marketing or maybe a sales manager or someone that's been essentially just delegated that, hey, they're doing the event. I think at that point we look like a trusted advisor
Mm-hmm.
versus someone telling them what to do, because a lot of times those people in those capacities don't want to be told what to do because they tell people what to do all day. So rather than trying, battle with that, those personalities, I just say, hey, here's some of the stuff we've done in the past rather. Use that as the template, mock it up any way you want, and then that way you and I can communicate well. And it's pretty much going to reduce the risk of anything going wrong. And always remember, I'm always happy to help, and I'm here to make you look good.
Yeah.
So when I feel like I speak in those tones and from that angle, I feel like it loosens people up, and all of a sudden we're on the same team instead of maybe a little battle going on as to who does what and who's in charge. And that's what's worked for me. I'm not saying it works for everybody, but I get a lot of clients that are doing either the person in charge is new to the position, or they just don't, as a company, don't do a lot of events. So I sat there and said to myself, well, how can I just make this climbing this mountain easier for not only them, but for me and my staff, so we can get to that point where we're communicating and understanding each other easily. So
Yeah, and I think one thing that you could do ahead of that too is asking those things at the discovery call. When people inquire, during the discovery process, do you have a run of show? Do you have an example of what you've done in the past? Mainly to do exactly what you do. You're kind of like leading them to that point where it's like, what is a run of show? Well, then you do need me more than you maybe thought you did. And I think
we
sometimes
also call
sales
it a
in general.
production script sometimes. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
sorry.
Which, however you call it, it's basically the same thing. What is the run of show? What is the run of the event going to be? And ultimately, you're trying to show them, because sales is generally adversarial. They're trying to not spend much, and you're trying to get them to, not spend more necessarily, but you're definitely trying to qualify what they actually need. So sometimes diffusing that by saying, well, if you don't know what a run of show is, then you need me more than you think you do. And it's totally okay. It's not about nomenclature. Because again, I don't care if it's scalpel number 5 or if they call it an F7 33 blade. I don't really care. What I care about is that you're going to be able to do the job exactly how you think you're going to be able to and make me look good. And that's really what we try to do. So I think any of those things that you're doing to pre-qualify will help a lot because it shows attention to detail and it shows that you know what you're doing and you can call a show. And I think that matters a lot.
Yeah.
So Chris, when you're working with a venue, and I would imagine this is the way it is for most all, or maybe not. You can tell me. Venues are like you're giving a quote to a client. You're working with them on a what they need necessarily, but
Sure.
the venue is going to ultimately. Some of these venues are going to mark that up, correct? And then they're the ones that are giving the price back to the client.
In our market, we don't really have that. In our market, we have
Okay.
100% transparency on, I would say, 99% of everything that we're doing. So I feel like that is one really great thing about where we are. It is very transparent. There's a lot of trust there, but there's also power in that partnership because we know that collectively we're better working together than against each other. And that venue would rather have us there handling those details than some of their internal staff that may or may not be as qualified working with that level of client. So
I
it's
know
tricky.
in our market, for example, I know a lot of the big AV companies have contracts inside of these big hotels and things like that.
Mhm.
And the hotels will have price lists from the big AV companies, but the hotels are able to quote what they want to quote based on what they would pay. So they're getting a little, they're
Right.
getting a little something on the other side. So
Yeah, and we see that
not
in
that
Omaha and
rare.
Minneapolis, but not necessarily in Sioux Falls.
Okay. All right. Yeah. 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 I think that's one way you can, I guess if you're like me and I wanted to approach a new venue other than the one that I currently have, being able to go in there and say, hey, not only can I do the quality work, but I might be able to help you out where you can make some money on the other side of this or whatever. So.
Yeah, there can definitely be a win-win there, especially if you're looking at that angle. I think the hard part is most of your larger AV companies, the national powerhouses, the national players, they are working that back end. So they're paying for access and then they're, charging accordingly. And then there's outside fees. So, I mean, they're going to make it up either way. But again, I think that you're seeing a lot of what we have anyway, around here is we have people that are anti that, so they're choosing to host their conferences locally or bring
Yep.
in these regional conferences because they don't have to deal with these massive contracts that are 10 grand for internet, 10 grand for power. It's we were in Austin for a huge conference 2 years ago and we got sprung with a $17,000 bill for internet because we were not an in-house provider, and we didn't pay it. The client obviously paid it, but that's a very large, that was like 20% of what we were, charging for the whole event. So like that is a massive increase, especially when budgets
Yeah,
are tight. So
it's good that you have to be careful when you get in and make sure you know all the angles here.
yeah, read the fine print.
I'll give you another example there where, we try and mix with the in-house AV. We did a charity military event, and I chose, or I was, working with the charity, and they had to show a 30-second video on the video screens at the venue, and they charged them $1,800 for 30-second video. So,
Wow. Yeah.
so that
That's
stuff happens, and I kind of agree with Chris that there's a lot of companies that are pushing back against the big corporate AV companies, and they don't want to give business to those properties because they feel like maybe they're not getting the best bang for their buck, in that they are not getting value out of it. So we just choose to work with all those the other venues in the area that aren't the big huge name brands, and there's room there. There's room to occupy that space and to be a trusted advisor.
Yeah, I think that's mainly the reason that I'm doing the hotel that I'm doing on a regular basis. I think that the markup was so big there, the cost and just initial cost was so big that, I think the girl looked at it like, hey, if I could reduce this cost a little bit, um, I might be able to attract more clients to my place versus these other places where they're having to pay, $10,000 for internet, like he was talking about. So yeah, interesting. If you guys are wondering, so Chris had to jump off. He may be back. I don't know. He was in the middle of some appointments today, and we grabbed him as a last minute guest, and he was gracious enough to come on and help us out. And man, the guy is just a wealth of knowledge when it comes to corporate AV. So really glad he could jump in and give us some
Yeah.
pointers today.
Yeah, and I want to talk about maybe making that jump. Chris was saying that it's not easy, and I'm not going to argue with him. It's not easy, but if you already run a high quality DJ company with quality equipment and great customer service, and you have processes in place, there is somewhat of a level transition to make over to just a different type of event. And almost like weddings, the format is pretty much similar each time. Usually you have a cocktail hour. Usually there's, a speaker, a series of speakers with your keynote being towards the end. And it's really just organizing everything and making sure, of course, that your gear is set up right and the room looks impeccable and things like that. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's kind of how I got into it. We started on a smaller scale with this particular venue, and then I also did some other things, ribbon cuttings, things like that, where they need a speaker and a microphone, and so a lot of DJs can provide that. You can do that pretty easily. It's a good way to get started, and then as you continue to prove that you know what you're doing, next thing you know, they may be asking for a little more, and then it can kind of grow that relationship from there. And I think it's very valuable for DJs, when you're, especially, that weekday work right now, our weekends are our inventory if you're just a DJ. And, to be able to add inventory, which is weekdays, is a big deal.
Yep. It is. It is. And I mean, I guess I want to clarify the point that not all gear is transferable. And let me try and share an example of that. So for a while, we were just using our using our regular Shure microphones on a mic stand for podiums. And then ironically, when my dad passed away, I spoke at the eulogy, and the church had this really nice podium Shure microphone. And I sounded like a freaking rock star in that church. And I said to myself, I am going on Sweetwater and I'm buying one of these this week. And it wasn't cheap, but it was a good investment. And I feel that it makes us look better when we do events, and the technology is better. And I did have to put a little sticker on there that said, don't touch the mic, because everybody kind of wants to grab and move that podium microphone to their lips. And I always tell them, don't touch the mic. You don't have to move it. We're going to capture you no matter what. Some listen, some don't. But I'm probably going to buy a second one, because now that I own that mic, I see a lot of conferences where there's 2 podium mics coming up, and I'm realizing that that's a backup for people. Just to have that, channel 1 is, for us, channel 1 is always the main mic, and then channel 2 would be that second podium mic, but the volume's just down. In case something happened, you just have to turn the volume up and you're good. So
yeah, that's a good tip. There's a lot of little things out there. Monitors for the stage so they can see their PowerPoint. Different ways to do that. So many ways to look at things. Even in those cases, one of the big questions that came up for me, and it can be a little tricky, is if you wanted to have the monitor, the second monitor, how do you split that? How do you split that to where they're seeing one thing and the screen's seeing another? There's a lot there. So,
do your research in PowerPoint itself.
Yeah,
you choose presentation mode or something. There's a way that they can see something different than is on the screen. And we always ask people, do you need that? Some of them say yes, some of them say no. Some of them choose to have their laptop right at the podium and it's just mirrored. Some of them want that advanced slide so they know what's coming next. So I always ask them, how do you prefer to give your, presentation? And then I just make it happen, because we know how to do all the different ways. And again, we don't want them to be forced to give their presentation a certain way. We want to know what's easiest for them, because then I feel they give a better presentation. And then we just make it happen. We make it easy for people to do business with us. And I think that it's all those little minute things that people appreciate. You know what I mean? They're not going to write a review on it, but they're just going to say, yeah, I want Terry and his crew. Like, they made everything easy.
Yeah. And then where I got into the thing with the PowerPoint properties there, yes, there are properties to say presentation mode versus screen. But when someone doesn't have their laptop there and you have a second monitor, so one computer is sending, one computer really needs to have 2 outputs, 2 video outputs, so that you can send one, you can send the presentation notes, the presenter mode over to the one that they're looking at. And then at the same time, the regular one's going up to the screen. There's different ways to do that. That's what I was getting at. And you're right. I mean, the more easy you can make it for people to do business with you, the better. And it's a great way it's a good initial talk about it, corporate AV. And maybe we can have Chris back on some other time to get a little deeper into that, because I'm really interested in more of that as well. So, so something that I was interested in talking about today, and I know we brushed on it just a little bit earlier. The NAMM gear, NAMM was happening this weekend. Some stuff came out. We guessed a little bit last episode what might come out. A lot of our guesses weren't right. I mean, battery powered was correct. Obviously, there's more battery powered stuff coming out. We did not see the larger Evolve yet. We did not see a controller that had moving platters, that had stems already built into it, dedicated stems buttons, I should say. But what we did see was really interesting, I thought. Hey, Chris is back. All right. So we were talking about the NAMM gear. We just now got to talking about that. What do you think of what I'll talk a little bit. The I think it was the Omnia from Pioneer. They have a controller that's battery powered. That controller is interesting in that it has some software that allows you to play from your phone. And I think that was the biggest thing I took away from it, other than the fact the price was bananas for that thing compared to, what other controllers in the market. So they had this software. It allows you could stream from your phone, from YouTube, whatever, and it actually loads to a deck. And then you could manipulate it like you would with your turntable or whatever, which I thought was really interesting. And maybe just the beginning of what we might see with some DJ software down the road. The other part I saw of it was the price, and at $1,500, I think it was, for a battery powered controller that has smaller features, a smaller footprint. I just kind of felt like, if you're looking to buy something, that would be a tough pill to swallow. I mean, it's cool to be able to sit in the back seat of the car and DJ going down the road, or go to your friend's house, or go out to the beach and DJ on your Bluetooth speaker. But at $1,500, I think that'd be more of a thing, maybe for influencers or something like that. But I think professional DJs can, there are already controllers you can run right off of your laptop, and not have to do that, smaller featured lap things. But I thought it was interesting. I think just the touch of the future there, seeing maybe what we might see in some other software. Thoughts on that?
I mean, my thoughts are that a controller with those features, who's their audience, right? I think that their audience is probably a greener DJ that doesn't necessarily have a monstrous, audio or video collection, and is trying to make it easy. I personally don't have any need for a controller like that. Like, my music is local. If we're running through cocktail hours of stuff, I'm going to be using Spotify. But when it's time to DJ itself, I need the files locally. I'm not going to trust streaming. I need to have those files on my machine. So I think that a piece of gear like that isn't going to fend well in the market, because green DJs aren't going to run out and spend $1,500 on a piece of gear. That's not their speakers, you know. I think there's a lot of other options out there, that come in at a lower price point. So I think that piece of gear, without testing it and playing on it, I think that piece of gear is in trouble.
Right, right, yeah. So then the other thing we saw come out was, Pioneer came out with a speaker that's battery powered, similar to the Everse 8. The one unique feature it had, though, was the ability to send sound wirelessly from speaker to speaker. So that I thought was pretty cool, and I think it would be neat to see that in the future in other speakers, mainly because if I think the example that I saw used was if you were providing an event outside for a big festival, or on a football field or whatever, you could literally just put the speakers, every 15 yards, and instead of it all having to come from you at your controller, the sound was actually going from speaker to speaker. So, really, really unique way of connecting speakers and sound. I thought that was pretty cool. I think it was it was waterproof. I don't know if it was fully waterproof. I don't know if you want to submerge it, but I definitely looked like you could keep it out in the rain. Um, and then I thought the other thing was it had a mode where you could make it a sub. So if you got three of them, or two of them, one could be the top, one could be the sub, which was unique as well. I thought that speaker was pretty neat. I don't know about as far as, price point on those things. I mean, an Everse versus one of those, they were similar price. I think there was about $100 more than an Everse. But yeah, I thought that was a neat product.
So again, without me seeing it, Brandon, is it one speaker to another, or is it one speaker to multiple others?
They could basically go to multiple. I mean, one would go to the next one, which would go to the next one. They all had their own built-in it's like a little box, similar to what the old Serato boxes looked like. Yep. And they plug in, and they actually fit inside the speaker, and they charge in there, and then you could use that to send sound remotely. You could also take it out of the box. You could put that box at your controller and send sound to the first speaker. If that makes sense.
I'm going to have to look into that, because that might be something that's useful for me. Because at Bike Week up in Laconia, we run 10 speakers over a quarter of a mile property for Harley Davidson because they want the same music all over their property, and they take over the restaurant next door's parking lot to put vendors up there, and they want the same, not only music, but like when they sell a bike, they get on the mic and go crazy, and they want that to be heard everywhere. So we've been doing that currently with a bunch of S1s and the Sennheiser mic packs.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm sending it to one and then sending it out of that one into another mic pack to another one. And, you know, there's limitations as to not so much line of sight, but just distance and everything else. So I'd be interested to run through that Pioneer box and see exactly what the limitations are and what the possibilities are.
Yeah. I thought that was neat. It looked like a little peek into some future technology we might see. That was the two biggest things I took from what I saw out there. I looked like EV didn't really introduce any. Well, they introduced the eVerse 12, which we saw, and we talked about that a little bit on the last episode. I didn't see anything else new from them. I looked at a couple of things as far as lighting goes, and there were some things lighting wise, but I didn't think anything was like groundbreaking that I saw. But
so
those were interesting.
Let me ask you a question from a guy that's not all excited about NAMM. So is there a portal or landing page where you can just see like what the cool new announcements are? Do you have to like dig through everything and look at every manufacturer? Because
honestly, I just looked out. I have some YouTube videos, did a little search for NAMM 24, DJ, things like that. The other thing was just going on DJ idea sharing or one of those Facebook groups and kind of just looking to see what people have shared out there. I thought that was kind of neat.
Well, so the audience knows we're proponents of a couple of DJ Facebook groups. So the ones that you and I are in, Brandon, which are private ones, you should post those links there because I'm lazy and I won't go look. But if it's there and I trust you and what your opinion is, like I'll say, oh, okay, let me take a peek at that. I just don't have the bandwidth to go out and hunt and get excited because I don't. But I trust you, so
cool.
If you post them in the posse or whatever, then that would be helpful to not only me, but I'm assuming some other people as well.
Yeah.
Without sounding like a dinosaur here.
So at the risk of sounding grumpy, then let's talk about bad requests at events. I know that was something you wanted to talk about, and it's really timely. My son went out and did an event that we've been doing for years. He's done the event several times. I did it 2 years in a row while he had moved out of state. Now he was back, and he did it this weekend. And we have a lady that comes up. She makes some requests, not always bad, but she's very demanding. When she wants it right then. She starts to send her friends up, and he got a little upset. Eventually, told her, hey, you're being rude. And so, so this is a timely thing. When you get bad requests, what do you do, and how do you handle it?
Let me ask you a question about that event first. Was the lady your client or just a guest?
She was not. She was just a guest and tends to drink a little too much and have a good time, which I've got no problem with. You're at an event, you want to dance, have a good time, that's fine. But you still have to treat people with respect. And she was sending people up literally. Her and her girlfriends. She was sending people up to the point that it was within 2 minutes of each other, where he wouldn't even get out of one song, and they were still asking for the same song. And it got to the point where he was feeling harassed, and he basically told her that she was being rude and that he was not playing the request now. And that, it had been going on for years and he was over it. So
well, it's funny because these days everything is instant gratification, right? And especially with music. Like, I'm older than you, but I used to sit there with the radio and my tape deck, pressing the button at the beginning of a song so I could record the song that was coming on the radio because I love certain music so much, right? Now music's disposable. You can just go to YouTube or Spotify, whatever you want, and just type in and get any song in the world. So people don't have much patience, and that's not necessarily their fault, but it still doesn't mean that we have to put up with rude behavior, right? Like, when something like that happens to me, as you may or may not know, I'm pretty direct. And I will just say, hey, that's it. If I hear another request for that song, it's not going on. I said I would play it. I'll play it when I can. And that's just the standard answer. And for one, I always have a roadie with me. And my roadie is really like my bodyguard to insulate me from people when I'm mixing, because I mix quick and everything.
Mm-hmm.
My roadies get paid and they know, intercept anyone that's coming up to talk to me, and then just write it down and say, we'll get to it if we can. And of course, everyone starts giving their 2 cents, like, oh, I'm the cousin of the bride, or the bride really wants to hear this, and blah, 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 blah. I've heard it all, but it still doesn't mean we have to put up with rude behavior, right? So one thing I do for weddings is I prep my couples in our final meeting, and I tell them stories of what's happened, that you have Backstreet Boys on the do not play list, and one of your bridesmaids or a bridesmaid in the past has come up and said, the bride wants to hear, blah, blah, blah by the Backstreet Boys. So I'm thinking, oh, she's changed her mind. Let me play that. It happened once. And the bride was pissed at me because her bridesmaid lied. And now I'm playing a song that my bride hates at her wedding. So I said, never again. So now what I do in my final meeting is I tell the couples about that story. And I say, listen, let's have a code word. I don't expect, if you're out there jamming with your friends and you want to hear a song, I don't expect that you come over and tell me what you want, because I don't want that. I want you to stay out and rip it. But if you do send someone over, let's have a code word so I know they're not lying to me. And that code word could be something simple, donuts, whatever. Don't tell everyone, just tell someone, hey, go tell Terry to play this song, and the code word's donuts. And then at least we reduce the risk, right? And I've also done things with brides where they come up and say, again, I'll use the Backstreet Boys because I was a New Kids on the Block fan, and I hate the Backstreet Boys. So, girl comes up and asks for the Backstreet Boys. I say, no, it's on the do not playlist. I'm sorry. What do some of these drunk bitches do? They go right up to the bride and say, I really want to hear the Backstreet Boys, and the DJ won't play it. And the bride feels like, oh, shit, I don't want anyone unhappy at my wedding. So she walks up with this sad face and says, Terry, will you please play the Backstreet Boys? And her friend is like, yes, yes, yes. And I say, no, I'm not playing it. Because, Marie, the Backstreet Boys are on your do not playlist, and I'm not playing something you hate at your wedding. So your friend can be pissed at me. Go dance. And I've done that multiple times to brides, and they are like, thank you so much. They don't want to be on the spot. I can be the dick, but I'm saving my client. You know what I mean? Like, I am not going to be like, yeah, okay, no problem. Let me play this song that you hate. No, I'm not doing that. That's
Right.
fucking homie. Don't play that. Like I'm an advocate for my couple, and we have this conversation, and we're laughing and everything in our final meeting. Does it happen every gig? No. Does it happen 30 or 40% of the time? Yes, it does. And because we've had these conversations, and because they trust me so much, that they're okay with that. Just tell people that Terry's in charge of the music. I'm just getting married today.
Yeah.
And it works out great, man. And I'm not saying we're not going to eliminate rude people, right? We're not.
No.
And I'll share another conversation with you. This past weekend, a jock that works for me had a 40th birthday party. I had a wedding. My other main DJ Chris had a gig. And this call came in like Monday. So I called a guy that used to work for me a lot, doesn't work for me much. I'm like, hey, I got this gig Saturday if you want it. 40th birthday party. It sounds easy. I talked to people, they were nice. He's like, yeah, he wants it. And then they get there, and 40th birthday party is usually 4 hours. First hour's cocktail, and then people get liquored up. They want to dance. All of a sudden, the client, the DJ was doing a good job, but the client, I'm not going to say she was drunk. Everyone was drinking, right? The client says, all right, at this point, I just want 90s hip hop and reggaeton. And she goes up and tells the DJ, hey, I'd like to hear 90s hip hop and reggaeton. And he starts playing some of that, and the crowd like dissipates, and then he goes back to Whitney Houston or whatever, and the crowd comes back up. And now it becomes a battle between the client and all her guests. And my DJ chose to do what he felt was right for the party, and the client got pissed because she wasn't hearing only 90s hip hop and reggaeton. Goes and unplugs his system. Like 20 minutes left, corrupting a hard drive and all this fun stuff. And he knew I was at a wedding, and he just chose to like deal with it and not tell me. And then he called me and said, hey, we're going to talk. And we went through it. But I guess the story is to just basically go back to the copy request thing. And what do we do as DJs? I feel like it's my job to kind of preface people beforehand as to what may or may not happen. and how I'm going to deal with it. And then if they okay to that, they'll hire me. If they don't, they won't, and that's okay. So I'm sure there's some other stories you want to tell.
Well, no, I agree with you, and I think the funny thing there is no good deed goes unpunished, right? You do this
Right.
person a favor, you find them a DJ to handle their last minute 40th birthday party, and then they want to complain and treat people poorly, and that's not good. So,
Yeah.
it seems like the cheaper events or the events like that are always the ones that are sometimes the ones that bite you in the ass later. But
Well, I kind of look at it as this lady sounds nice. I want to help her. It's a local venue. But then it's also like, maybe we can get another review out of this. Maybe, this will lead to some weddings with this client. Like I always want to build rapport with people.
oh
And
yeah,
I wasn't going to stick someone in there that I thought was inadequate. If she had said, we only want 90s and reggaeton, I would have been like, hey, I don't have a DJ that can cover 4 hours of that. So
right, yeah, that's
maybe
not
it's best
easy.
you just
Yeah,
keep calling, so.
right.
But I don't feel like I made a mistake in taking the gig. I feel like their actions and their expectations were unrealistic. But now I have to deal with: are we going to get a bad review? Is the venue going to think less of us? Like it's all that stuff. And
Yeah,
I'm a business owner. It's like for the couple of $100 I made off that party after paying the DJ and everything else. It's like, was it worth it? I'd rather just get no calls and do
yeah.
my wedding and come home and drink a scotch and go to bed.
That's something that this time of year I juggle with. We'll get events that are this is probably the time of the year where you get the most last minute events for me. It's January and you've got these little school dances calling and,
Yep.
fundraisers and galas and different things. And they're all coming up within the next month or two when they call. And I some of them are not the highest paying jobs, and you can quote them high, but a lot of times you're just not going to get them if you do quote them high.
Right.
But at the same time, I've got DJs sitting around. It's winter here, and I've got DJs
Yeah, no,
sitting
I agree with
around.
you.
They need some money, and is it worth it? Even if I don't get a big cut of that, is it worth throwing it out there to keep my DJ working and busy? So I know that's a little off topic from what we started, but I think it's a good way to take it. I think that's a unique challenge for multi ops in particular, and maybe even for a solo op. I mean, if it's January and you're like, man, I got to pay the bills. I mean,
Yeah.
things are coming in.
Yeah,
You got
that's the way I look at it. Is all my credit cards coming in from Christmas now, and I need to try and subsidize that a little bit. And hotel rooms do it right. You call the 4th of July, it's a 3-night minimum at $330 a night. You call mid-January, it's probably $75. Come up
true.
and sleep here.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not a huge on off season discounts, but I think there's something, at least for me, about keeping my DJs busy and keeping them working. And so, I'll give you an example. I got a school dance that called up and, it's a 2-hour middle school dance, right after school type thing. And a lot of times I wouldn't even entertain that. I would just say, sorry, it's not for us.
Yeah.
A lot, mainly because look, I don't want to do it myself. And if it's a Thursday after school, one of my DJs says they agree to take it and they're going to make a little bit of money, and then something comes up and they can't do it, like something comes up and they get sick or whatever. Now I'm stuck doing that, and I don't want to be doing it for that little bit of money. I would prefer not to do them at all. So, but this time of year, we had one come in the other day. I gave him a quote, and for 2 hours, my guy will get to go out and make some money this winter, and it'll be good for him. He was interested in doing it, so we took it. But those are things that I do a little bit differently in the winter than I do throughout the rest of the year.
Yeah, and I mean, when you're multi-op, that's the thing, right? It's like your mortgage is always the same, your insurance is always the same monthly, is what I'm saying. So
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
slow months, I'm not giving away services, but we can certainly help people. And I always let them know that, if there is a discount, that the discount is because it's this type of year. And if you're happy, we do other
right.
things as well. You're trying to build rapport with people, clients and new
Mhm.
customers and everything else. But that's maybe a setup for another podcast too. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, back to bad requests. One last thing that kind of, as we close that out, I one line I like to use sometimes if they just keep coming up like they were the other day is just explaining to them, look, I can't play them all at once. I've got multiple requests and I can't play them all at the same time. Okay, I can play two at once sometimes, but not and sometimes they'll understand that it's like, hey, you're in the list. Look, you can even show them on the screen. Look, you're right. You're in the list. And then it's funny because they'll look and there, is that where I'm at in the list? I'm like, no, that's not where you're at. You're just in the queue. I decide as it's going where it's going. But yeah, that one's always fun. But I try not to say it's on the bride's do not playlist because exactly what you said, they'll run straight to the bride. So you throw out the little white lies, right? Like I'll try to work that in, or let me see what I can do.
It's coming back. Nowadays, as a what's the acronym? IGGAF. I don't give a fuck, DJ. I just tell them I don't have it.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
You don't have, the new song by Dua Lipa? No, I don't have it.
You don't have YMCA? Right? Yeah.
Don't have it.
I got you.
What else do you want? And then I just kind of redirect them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if you just say, no, I can't play it, now you create enemies. So, if someone comes up and says, oh, can you play this Pearl Jam song? I'm like, well, I might have played something during dinner for you, bro. But like, they're jamming right now to the Spice Girls. Like, Pearl Jam's not going to work. But if you want rock, maybe I can do a rock set in a half hour or so. Like I kind of, there's an old sales term, like if you can't convince them, confuse them. Like if you confuse them, like you might have it on the list or you might not, but you're not committing, and at least then they're not going to hound you.
Yeah, I sometimes, the idea of, well, I'll try to get to it or whatever. You're right. Sometimes it doesn't work and they just keep hounding you. That you can just be direct. I have done that. I've said, hey, it's a great song. I'd love to listen to that song in my car, but it's not a dance song. People aren't going to dance to that. I'm sorry. Or if the artist is good,
I want it.
Right.
I don't care about other people. I want it.
Yeah. So my job is to keep people dancing. I'm sorry. That's things I've said before. If it's a good artist, but not a good song, then sometimes I can have that conversation. Hey, what about this one by them? And see if they're willing to let me play that one instead of the other one. And if that will take care of them, so I don't know. Those are some tips, some things I do.
Sometimes, like, I'll give you an example too, Brandon. I was at a bridal show yesterday and I was talking to this bride, we had a good vibe. We had a good conversation. I'm answering her questions. And she goes, yeah. And I want to, put on the invites for everyone to list their favorite song so they can all get their favorite requests in. I'm like, okay, yeah. How many people are you inviting? Oh, 120. Okay. Well, that's 120 different favorite songs that people will have. And if you do that, now they're going to expect it. And I only get to play about 60 songs at your wedding. And how many songs do you want to be played? And right away, she just does these one of like, oh, okay. Yeah. Like, so by asking questions, sometimes it's like you can educate them, like as to the decisions we have to make. And that helps out sometimes,
Yeah. That's another one with those invites. Good point. That does happen. They get the invites. They have the song requests on the invites.
And then the ones that come up and tell you that, hey, I requested Brown Eyed Girl on that invite, so when it's time.
Yeah, what's going on? Yeah, what I'll do a lot of times with those is if it's a lot of those tend to come back slow songs though, because they're thinking, oh, at the wedding, I have to have a slow song. So I'll at least if they're going to do that, I'll say, hey, we might need to do that during dinner or something. Play most of those during dinner. We're not going to we can't make a night out of 30 slow songs that these people send in. It's not going to work. So that's something you can do. Or they can just put on there what fast song will get you on the dance floor. So be more specific on the invite, so that at least they're providing fast songs. If you're quick mixing, you can get some more songs in. But you're right. I mean, you're not going to get them all in, and if they're expecting them, those things can be a little bit of a trap. So, absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean, it's tough because it seems reasonable when they think about it. Like, hey, let's do this. But I just try and ask questions to get them to think about the whole thing. And I don't ever want to burst anyone's bubble when it comes to an idea, unless they're asking me to do the shoe game or some shit like that, because I'm not doing that. But I want them to be able to trust us and put it in our hands, and I call it lucky. Some brides just say, here's our intro songs, here's our first dance songs, you just do the rest. And I'm just like, yes, you're the best bride ever.
All right. Yeah. Well, I think we've gone long enough on today's episode. If you like the show, we're going to be putting these out give us a like, give us a follow, recommend them, share them with your friends, share them with your DJ friends. We'd love to have some people check these out. They're going to go live hopefully this week, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and one thing I kind of want to mention, guys, is that like I want to be clear that I'm not telling people how things should be done. If I'm sharing my examples with you, and maybe you take one piece of that and like Play-Doh it into something else that works for you, that's great. But these are the things that have helped us, saved us in our DJ career. And if there's anything that you can take from it, that's great.
Yeah, I think
I'm
that
an asshole.
one of the pieces of advice I got early on when I was out on DJ Chat years ago, which was, some of the best ways to phrase things when you're putting things out there is, this is what works for me, and so these are the things that work for us. And everybody along the way is sort of finding their way, and you make mistakes along the way. And we've been doing it long enough. We've made plenty of mistakes, and we still make them. Yeah. And so, it's a good to share with the DJ community, and maybe we can all learn from each other. So,
yeah, we're always learning. As soon as you think you're not learning, that's when you are burnt out. That's a piece of advice I'll give you too. So.
Well, thanks for tuning in today, and we'll see you next week with episode 4.
All right. Take care, boys and girls.